And thank you for staying with us. So you've heard the analyst's view the whole day. You've heard the view of the various groups, GPLTU, TUC. Everybody has said a few things about the president's pronouncements last night. On the back of that last 1 hour, from the analysis from Bright Simmons, Kojo Asante, and Dr. Atoforsen, in the studio with me is the Information Minister, Kojo Oppong Nkrumah. Kojo, thank you very much for your time here on PM Express once again.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start from the general.
Yeah.
The whole day, I'm pretty sure you have a monitoring team. They've monitored the airwaves. I'm sure you yourself have been doing the rounds across the country. I get the sense, the general sense I get, listening to specifically Guta, GAU, GPRTU, a few experts, Hoteliers Association, I mean, very specific. The one word has, in fact, Kojo Asante, who civil society, who was here, one word that had come up is disappointed. Did not meet our expectation. That's a verdict. What's your reaction to it?
Well, yes, indeed, there are some people who are disappointed. Some people for whom the president's address did not meet their expectation. And there are some persons who are also very pleased that he touched on all the key issues that they were expecting him to touch on. Some were pleased with the fact that he had started articulating the broad measures that we should be embarking on as a republic. The reaction has been mixed, but this is really not surprising. I remember right from the beginning when we were fighting the last crisis, COVID. And for example, when we talk of pool testing and the fact that we had tested X numbers in a day, you had people, including some of the people who you have mentioned specifically by name, saying it's not true, it's not possible, you can't test this number, I don't believe it, it's not credible. We had all of those ones. But I think what was important was that as we kept going and as we kept explaining and showcasing the realities, people started coming along with us. And as you, our colleagues in the media, gave us an opportunity to reach out more and show to the various stakeholders why what we were saying was true. For example, people started understanding that the numbers we were putting out were not cooked up. People started understanding that the testing that we're talking about was not cooked up, and that the interventions that were being rolled out were interventions that were clearly thought through. So for me, at the beginning of quote-unquote a crisis, it is really not strange when people say, oh, I'm disappointed, I'm not pleased, I don't find this credible, I don't believe this, etc. It's normal at the beginning of a crisis. The important thing is the consistency with which you go, the honesty and the clarity that you bring to the table, your ability to even concede where there are errors, and to carry everybody along. Because at the end of the day, our objective, our common objective, is to resolve together the challenges that the Ghanaian economy is having. And so views have been mixed, but I think it's early days.
So let's go to some of the specifics. I mean, there's a lot for you to go through. I'm sure the whole day you've heard a lot, and from our own 1 hour conversation. Another sense, reading from the president's document, another text of what he said, coming into expectation for many was that we're going to hear some real groundbreaking new interventions that will deal with our current crisis now. The view was we need to survive today to fix the long-term issues.
That's true.
But some of what the president said included, many said, very old promises, such as his announcement of an implementation of a property rate regime. Did you concede that this was a largely rehash of old promises, some of which have failed?
So let me give you the context. First, there was this suggestion that the president was not communicating with the country, which is not true, because the president had been traveling across the country and speaking to some of the interventions at various places, sometimes in radio stations, sometimes at debates, sometimes at programs. But we can see that the fact that he was not on, quote-unquote, the fellow Ghanaians platform, articulating them, meant that there was a good number of people across the country who were not even following some of those interventions. The second point is that some of those interventions don't change. You can bake it, twist it, turn it. They don't change. They are the very things that you need to do. And the important thing is how you get it done and done well to deliver the results. Now, yesterday, and things like property rates that you talk about, for me, amount to one minute detail. But yesterday, the president outlined 12 measures. some of which dealt with the forex situation, some of which dealt with one of the most important things which is biting our people, cost of living, some of which dealt with things like trying to mitigate the impact of what is going on the most vulnerable in society. I think the best approach is to ask yourself, issue by issue, does this solution work?
Which
if
really
it does,
is the heart of this conversation.
Yes. If it does, then we go to the next step of who is responsible, what are the timelines,
and the specifics.
And the specifics.
In fact, I'll come to that. I'm going to go through each and allow you some of the big ones and allow you to explain. But just before you came in, Kojo Asante, civil society. So one of the key things we're looking for is, the substance is good. We'll go to the substance. But in the crisis, you want your leader to exude credibility, that you can trust his word.
Yeah.
And that is so important, because if you miss that, I'm not listening to your specifics, because I just simply can't trust what is coming out of your mouth.
Yeah.
It's a reason why I'm just going to put one specific issue that he said to you. It's not a major intervention, but it's one that people will look at and say, but how do I trust that if you're even getting that wrong, or you haven't even fulfilled that promise, and yet you included it in the major, crisis speech, then maybe there's a credibility issue there. Property rate. If you look at your 2022 budget, you've said in there that you implement this January 2022, right? We are in November. In fact, tomorrow is November. We are in end of October. The president is still talking about it, and the implementation hasn't started. When the timeline fixed for this was effective January 2022. Look at that and you ask yourself a fair question. Why is the president mentioning this 10 odd months after the deadline that he himself, his finance minister, had put to it, had elapsed?
So property rates is really not one of the 12 major things the president.
I know. I'm just saying that one of the items shows credibility. That's why I prefaced my question to the credibility question.
I'll come to it specifically.
Because that is an issue.
I'll come to it specifically, but I just want to situate it well. That the 12 big things the president talked about does not exactly include property rates. I admit property rates and other revenue options were mentioned under the conversation of moving our revenue to GDP from 13% to somewhere 18–20%. And the question becomes, so what has accounted for the inability to fully roll out what was initially envisaged in the last budget for property rates specifically? If you look at what has been done on property rates, there was the need to sign, because first of all, by the legal regime, property rates were done by the district assembly. We have now sought to employ a new method where they are done at the national level through, I think, local government ministry and then the Ghana Revenue Authority. And the contracting process and the legal maneuvering has taken some time. My understanding is that they've come very far and are due to kick off ASAP. It is a reason for which the president has confidence to mention it as part of the sub-measures that are aimed at delivering this moving revenue to GDP ratio from 13 to about 8.
But you consider this is a government that is suffering credibility issues on that, because in the budget, just a second, in the budget you said, in the budget paragraph 247, just a key, it's important. In the budget paragraph 247, the finance minister was clear. Government is proposing for consideration approval of this House fiscal policy measures, the whole draft of it. Point 2, implementation of a unified common platform for property rate administration with effect from 1st of January. My question is, in the midst of a crisis, when you include a policy that you have failed to meet your own deadline, to meet your own deadline,
it hasn't met the timeline. I'm saying to you
that throws out
the president has confidence to mention it because of how far they have come with it. I can understand if somebody says, oh, you mentioned the last time it's not been delivered. Do you have reason to believe that it can happen this time? And I'm saying that the president is confident to mention it because of all the work they have done so far in getting the legal maneuvering done and in getting the platform deployed in the relevant areas. But in addition to that, for example, is something like the EVAT system, where you are no longer allowing organizations to do manual tabulation of VAT wherever they are. And you notice, for example, that when they did the VAT invigilation in some of the shops, VAT compliance has moved up by about 1,700%. It gives them basis to believe that if it is fully implemented, they can hit some of these numbers. Admittedly, as a republic, we have not met all our revenue targets in the decades gone by. NPP, NDC, it's been something that we have suffered over the years. But the president has confidence to mention these ones because of the kind of work that has been done on them. But back to the point, is the 12 big measures the president
Let's start with the first one. And I believe
mentioned
the most important
and whether they work or
yes,
not.
the most important one is the fuel one. And I say the most important for obvious reasons. It's the one thing that affects almost everything else. And he says, quote, government is working to secure reliable and regular sources of affordable petroleum products for the Ghanaian market. How and where is government securing this affordable petroleum?
Okay.
So how and where?
So I'll come to that specifically. Let me also mention that, as I've said all day today, these are highlight measures that have been measured. And like we've done in times past, the persons or the agencies responsible for them will have the opportunity to provide the details as we go along. Intermittently, as new measures are arrived at, the president will do the high-level announcement, and then those responsible will give the details. Remember when we did it during COVID? Sometimes after the big address, you have ministers responsible for various sectors or the Ghana Health Service come and flesh out the details. It's the same thing we are going to do here. And so the energy minister, the MPA, and the teams that are working on it are going to provide those details. But let me just tell you what I know about that. That today you are operating a deregulated market where BDCs go out there and buy from refineries and OTCs. We have had times in our republic where we have had similar challenges, causing the need or generating the need for the government to arrange direct supply channels, sometimes with sovereigns. In President Kufuor's day, we did it with Nigeria, with Sahara lifting for us. And you could have supply, credit lines, and a fixed price that you could bank on. It's a very similar arrangement that has already commenced, the exploration of which has already commenced. And I'm expecting that in the coming weeks, the MPA, the Energy Ministry, will have the opportunity to provide the details. But here's the question that I think we should start off by asking. What is causing the cost of living challenge that we face today? A good chunk of it is fuel. Fuel prices have gone up. We did a budget of $64 per barrel in 2021 November. By February this year, a barrel of crude oil had gone up to about 100. In fact, by February, March, had gone up to about 110, almost doubled. Today it's come down when I checked to, I think, about 94. But two things are happening. OPEC is cutting production, which signals that prices may go up. And if you are watching what's happening in Asia between China, Taiwan, you should be worried whether or not it may affect crude oil prices some more, should there be an escalation. Now, if indeed it is true that crude oil prices or fuel prices are the things that are causing an increase in transportation and food, and consequently a general escalation in prices of goods and services across our republic, then it should be true equally that if you tackle fuel, reliability and affordability, you will be finding a way to halt this rapid escalation. The first question is, does this work? For all your analysts and for all of the commentators, I would expect that this is the kind of contemplation we come to.
But that is where
it's a first step.
That is where the details you provide to back this then begin to address that fundamental question. When I asked how and where was to deal with that, you've said one of the ways you're going to do this. You cited the example when we did in the Kufuor, where we went to Nigeria, where they give us some, fuel at crude at concessionary prices. Are we talking about crude? Are we talking about refined products? So,
assuming those details are not out, if you asked any of your analysts that what is the best way to deal with the cost of living, I would imagine that without even knowing all of these details, they will be able to tell you that the best way to go about it is to find a way to deal with the cost of fuel. The rapid
that is, everybody agrees with that.
So no, I'm asking I'm asking the specifics now. We're in an era where we don't necessarily have the common truth. Everybody
has with the fuel prices,
so
I think there's
it is
consensus around the table.
To examine the president's first measure. Does this work? If it does, we're waiting for Energy, NPA, the rest to provide the details.
No, but
and we can
as we speak tonight, without the specifics, nobody can say if this works.
No, I'm saying even if we hadn't put the specifics on the table, because I'm not sure all your analysts are just complaining. They are preferring solutions. Those solutions they are not preferring with these details in mind. They are preferring general solutions that if you want to do with the cost of living, tackle fuel. And if you want to tackle fuel, this is the way.
And you specifically
I'm saying
the way you want to do it. I mean, I think for a government, is the solution.
Exactly.
And specifically how you're going to deliver. I'm saying that you've said specifically.
What the president has done is that he has delivered the high level. And I've told you that,
that
you are going to have the details being brought out. So the question I'm asking is, Our examination is, does this work? I'm expecting somebody to say...
as for does this work?
If I'm landing.
Okay.
If I'm landing. I'm expecting somebody to say, this is not the way to go. Or somebody to say, well, this works. Now let's see the detail. And then you have other high-level measures.
But let's drill down. I mean, as I sit here right now, I can't say what other people will say, but I can only ask for the specifics. Reliable, regular sources, affordable.
Yeah.
You've mentioned, you've gone into the past about what we've done.
Yes.
And I'm asking, I'm asking, are we going to seek the concessionary pricing in terms of securing this reliable, affordable on crude or on refined products?
I'm saying to you that I'm going to let the Energy Ministry and the MPU provide you all of those details.
Okay, so do we know that as of
now? They have already started some work on it, even in the weeks gone by. Traveled out, met some of the other sovereigns and some of the other sources.
So we've already been out of the country engaging with
that has already started.
Possible suppliers.
That has already started.
And we have assurances that we'll get it at affordable prices.
I'm saying that the work has already started. I will want them to come and put out those details. But what I'm saying to you is that the president identifies as a high-level solution this.
When will this...
And we can mine the details with the specifics.
When will this affordable petroleum arrive at the pump?
As I mentioned to you, we're going to have the team come and be available and provide those answers.
Okay, when will the team
there's a
be
whole
available?
schedule that will be rolling out of who comes on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday to provide all of those details. I don't think that we would expect that we dump it all together at a go. We have to take our time and carry the country and everybody along. So that is item number two.
We haven't, just a second.
Yeah.
We haven't fixed a date yet where we get, because this, you say it's...
We haven't fixed a date yet.
A date for the explanations and the
I said we have a whole schedule. Okay. The address was only last night.
I know.
Today, I'm going around providing
I know. I'm asking specifics about...
Those are available. We will make them available.
Okay. But I'm asking when. Do we know?
I'm saying that we'll publish the schedule, and then you know when everybody appears. Okay. But I'm saying that there are 12 points that the president has outlined.
Yeah, my job, is to go through them as
my job is to provide you the answers.
And so let's go. So as for the fuel, which I still insist is the most important one that needs to be dealt with. As we speak currently, we have to wait for the specifics.
No, I'm telling you that we are going to roll out the schedule, and you have the people like we've done this before. Okay. You are pretty clear.
The context,
they will come and provide those
the context. So probing that the context of the current global economy surrounding petroleum products is different from the time that we went to Nigeria.
Yes,
we have a global crisis around crude generally.
Yes,
obviously because of Ukraine, Russia, which has sent the prices up. We've seen Shell announce astronomical profits over the last few days, which means everywhere else, even the most powerful countries, US, UK, are all having the challenges of increase. So where in the world is government going to source affordable petroleum products when everywhere else is expensive?
Well, two things. I'm not going to preempt what the people responsible for the sector are going to do. I've told you that we are scheduling for all of them to come and provide you their detailed presentations. And during those detailed presentations, all of these questions can be put to them. The president has outlined 12 measures, and I'm taking you through those 12 measures. But I find it interesting that you are saying that the cost of living and the fuel prices, and you use the word, obviously, Russia and Ukraine. I thought that, a few minutes ago, we had a presentation that sought to suggest otherwise. From some of the... Really? What did it suggest?
No, it didn't. It says that you cannot dismiss the fact that Russia and Ukraine has had an impact, but Ghana's is an outlier in terms of the impact. And in fact, that brings me to a subject of what the president said yesterday, comparing us to other countries in the sub-region on the same point we just made, that Russia and Ukraine. You talk about inflation in some of the neighboring countries. It talks about several folds increase.
Yes.
We drill down the specifics. Yes. Ghana is 37%. You mentioned Senegal. They have, increased several folds, but they're currently at 11%.
But where did they come from?
My point is, if you drill down to the specifics,
where did they
you can talk about folds of increase. But we are nowhere in
Senegal
terms of the real specifics.
Senegal used to have inflation of... Senegal used to have
11%.
Senegal used to have inflation at 1.02%.
Yes.
And now it has gone up to 11.9%.
Yes.
Okay?
But it's in
that
terms
is a
of the
factor
fold.
increase. I haven't used the word fold. You
No,
are.
but that's the president. I'm sorry.
No, I'm saying
your own president used the word fold. Fold.
I am saying you are using the word
president.
fold. I'm coming.
The president
I'm saying
used
that's a factor increase.
No, I mean just clarify. Just clarify. I'm sure you had a hand in the statement.
You can twist it and make it in a way you want. I'm saying
the president used.
Can I share with you the data I
Mr.
have?
Oppong Nkrumah, you are the information minister.
Yes.
The president used the words increase, folds of increase. He mentions the several percentages.
Can I share with you the data I have?
My point to you is that when you talk in those terms, yes, of course, everywhere else, inflation has gone up by several folds. UK is experiencing historical
UK has gone up by a factor increase of 7.84%.
Yes. So my point
from 1.3% inflation.
My point is
to 10.2%.
You talk about Senegal.
Yes.
At 11%, even where they've increased so much.
11.9% currently.
Yes.
From
Ghana,
1.02%.
Ghana, we're talking about
Ghana
37.
From 7.14
to 37%.
That's a factor increase of 5.21%.
That's still in real
statistics we're talking about.
In real terms.
This is statistics we're talking about.
We're talking in real terms.
Yeah.
In real terms.
Yes.
The person on the streets of this country is experiencing more hits in this pocket now compared to the person in Senegal. You can see that.
Can I answer you?
No, I'm just asking a simple question.
Well, I'm answering. It's a simple answer. I'm saying to you that people want to create the impression that the inflation challenge is just a Ghanaian problem. What the president... Can I respond to your question?
Yeah, but nobody has said that.
Can I respond to your question?
Yeah, please.
It's that over and over again. You hear people every now and then make that...
No, nobody has said that it is a uniquely Ghanaian problem.
That, the government wants to blame the inflationary challenge on something that is not necessarily as present on Ghana as it is on others. And I'm saying to you, the data speaks for itself. That inflation in Ghana was at 7.14% in 2019. It's now at 37.2, the highest in about 40 years. That is a factor increase of 5.21%. I'm not sure anybody would dispute that. In Togo, it was 0.5%. It is now at 8%. That is a factor increase of 16%. In Senegal, which we are just talking about, it was 1.02. That's a factor increase of 11.9%. In Cote d'Ivoire, it was 0.81. That's a factor increase of 5.4%.
So question.
What it shows here is that all of these countries we are talking about are seeing the highest inflation in about 40 years by a factor increase. Can I land with
No, but to the question, I think you've made the point.
I haven't made my point. Let me land. I haven't made my point.
I think you've made the point. The president said this yesterday.
I have to answer the question. I have to answer the question.
The president said this yesterday.
I have to answer the question.
My fundamental question.
Can I answer the question?
My fundamental question.
I have to answer the question.
No, but you have answered the question.
I haven't. I'm answering the question.
You said they've increased in folds.
No, I haven't completed my answer. If you let me finish my answer. I am saying to you that the point the president makes with this point is that it is not just a Ghanaian problem. Yeah, it is a problem.
Let me ask my question now.
Answer the question.
Pull up the graph on the screen for me.
That it is not just a Ghanaian problem.
Yeah, nobody disputes that.
But it is a problem that is manifesting across the world. And then he goes on to say...
No. But before you go on...
Let me just finish my answer.
I think you finished on that.
I haven't finished.
No, you finished.
Let me finish.
Let's drill down. Let's drill down.
He goes on to say...
Let's drill down. No,
when I finish my answer, you can ask me a question.
We had the president yesterday, Mr. Oppong.
Well, so then maybe we don't need this interview.
You are quoting from the president.
I am answering your question.
No, but you have.
Let me read to you the reality on the ground. In truth, however, the fact that there are petrol queues in France does not make it more tolerable that the trotro price from Kaswa to Circle...
We had the president yesterday.
No,
but what you're saying is
you're not letting me even finish my sentence.
But here's the question.
You're not letting me finish my sentence.
No, but you have.
If you let, I'm midway through my sentence.
So you're reading the president's statement, which we had yesterday.
I am answering your questions.
My question to you is: do you concede that? Pull up the graph for me and go on the screen for me. Do you concede that? I'm using Senegal because that's the highest jump in terms of the president's comparison. That the gentleman on the street in Senegal at 11.7%. And the gentleman on the street in Ghana at 37.3%. The gentleman in Ghana has taken a bigger hit to his pocket as a result of inflation than the person you are referring to in Senegal. Do you concede that?
Can I answer your question now? The president has made a clear point that what we are dealing with is not just a Ghanaian problem. It is a problem that is manifested across West Africa and the world, but we have a responsibility to provide answers to it. He has provided 12 different answers aimed at tackling them. And those answers, I have started by telling you, you started off by saying cost of living for you is the biggest. I actually agree with you. It is the biggest. He's rolled out a solution to that. Another challenge.
I'll come to that. Mr. Oppong Nkrumah. I'll come to that because I will go to that. Not you, unfortunately.
Oh, really?
So final question on this. Final question on this. Are you saying to the ordinary man on the street bearing 37% inflation that his pain is equal to the 11.9% person in Senegal? Is that what you're telling the guy?
I don't think that I have said anything to that effect.
I'm asking a question.
I said I haven't said anything to that effect. So it surprises me how you come to that conclusion.
So the only point...
What I have said is that the president's point is simple, that the challenge we're experiencing is not peculiarly a Ghanaian challenge. Yeah. It is global.
But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to the president.
However, we are responding. What are the response mechanisms?
I'll come to that. But it doesn't matter to the president.
You don't appear interested in the solutions.
I'll come to that. Yeah. It doesn't matter to the president that, yes, everywhere else is experiencing inflation, but my people, compared to the three countries you mentioned, are suffering far more. Let me land.
Oh, really? You want to land?
Yes, because I have to answer.
You want to land, but I don't land when I answer the question.
For me,
no.
That doesn't matter.
If it didn't matter to the president, if it didn't matter to the,
let me finish my question.
But you don't let me finish my answers. If it didn't matter to the president, if it didn't matter to the president, we will not be introducing the measures that we are introducing.
The president's first line of argument is correct, that everybody else across the globe is experiencing some form of inflationary pressures.
Yes.
My people, in comparison to all those other countries you mentioned, are experiencing far more pain in comparison to all those other countries.
I'm saying that if it did not matter to him? I'm saying that if it did not matter to the president, he would not be introducing these measures that he's introducing. It is precisely because it matters to the president that he's outlined these 12 measures, which he's hopeful we will all join.
Let's go to the second. Let's go to the second.
You won't even let me finish my answer.
Okay, but you just going to the measures.
I am not done. You won't let me finish.
You mentioned measures.
You asked me a question. Let me finish. I'm saying that because it is relevant to the president, that's why he's introduced these measures, which he's expecting that all of us will rally round and support him to implement.
So let's go to the next measure. We plan to reduce our total public debt to GDP ratio to some 55%.
Yeah.
In present value terms by 2028. Is it one of the big ones?
Well, for me, one of the biggest ones is the effort to reduce the availability of Forex.
No, I'll come to that. I'm asking,
you asked me, is it one of the big ones?
No,
and I'm telling you what I consider as one of the biggest ones.
This is one of the big ones. Let me ask you a question.
Well, I'm answering your question.
I'll come to that.
That one of the big ones.
You introduced a new measure.
No, I'm not. You asked me, is it one of the big ones? And I'm telling you that one of the big ones
so you disagree.
Is the availability of Forex.
I'll come to that as a substantive question.
To ensure that we import essentials.
So the president said yesterday.
And de-emphasize on essentials.
So I'll come to that. The president said yesterday, because it's a big one because you're talking to the IMF and debt is an issue.
Yeah.
We plan to reduce our total public debt to GDP ratio by 55% in present value terms by 2028.
Yeah.
So this promise will fully materialize in 6 years from what the president has said. The president will be in charge of the economy for 2 of these 6 years.
Yeah.
So what precise percentage is the president committing himself to reduce the debt by in these 2 years when he's still in charge?
The finance ministry has come to parliament in the middle of November and is going to present what we call the fiscal adjustment strategy. That fiscal adjustment strategy, which we've already agreed on with the IMF, is a strategy that moves us from currently where we are about 73%. And then if you add onto it the contingent liabilities, there are those who say it's somewhere around 104. That strategy is what maps out the path that brings us from there to 55% by 2028. And it has a year-on-year target that is supposed to be achieved. All of those details are going to be put out by the 15th of November when the finance minister appears before Parliament to present it before the House. What the president did was to answer the big question of, if we have a debt overhang, how do we deal with it? And especially now that we've arrived on that as part of a fiscal adjustment strategy with the fund, what the president did was to announce it to the country that this is one of the things we have agreed upon. What it will do is that it will help free up fiscal space for us to be able to invest in the things that we desire.
So in the budget, we'll get to know in the next 2 years that he's in charge, how much of that reduction he will be responsible for.
Year by year.
Okay. Another big one, and the president reserved this for last, and he was very emphatic on this, talking about no haircuts. He assured the Ghanaians that no individual institutional investor, including pension funds and government treasury bills instruments, will lose their money as a result of the ongoing IMF negotiations. Clarify for me when he says no haircuts. Is that categorically asserting that there will be no debt restructuring?
Haircut is not synonymous for debt restructuring.
That's my question. So explain that for me when he says.
First of all, haircut,
is that what he means?
No, I'm coming. That cannot be what he means, because haircut is not synonymous to debt restructuring. Debt restructuring is a broader exercise. There are some times where debt restructuring requires a haircut, and usually when you say a haircut, it means principal haircut. I watched my friend Ato Fortune's presentation with John Dramani Mahama a couple of days ago, the former president, and he was categorical, principal haircuts. Now, there are various ways of dealing with debt restructuring. There are some where you go for haircuts, there are some where you go for reprofiling, there are some where you go for elongation of tenors, etc. Now, government had not announced anything. What happened was that speculation started, and indeed some persons took the speculation to another level by attempting now to be categorical and talking about principal haircuts. And the president was quite clear that that is not going to happen.
So principals will not be touched, but that means a host of things could still is in play, which is extension of maturities, renegotiation of interests.
There are
still on the table.
There are various options. The details of the strategy have not been announced. They will be announced. There was specific speculation that the president was dealing with, and that's what he spoke to.
So this specifically is on haircuts, but on the table still are possible renegotiation of maturity days, which could be extended, and also interest rates that could be renegotiated downwards. That is on the table.
Those details will be announced later.
Okay, so what it means is that this categorically doesn't mean that we're not going to have debt restructuring.
I have said that no haircut is not equal to no debt restructuring. Yeah. Debt restructuring includes a number of things. If you're going to bring your debt down to 55% of GDP, obviously you're going to restructure it. And the details of that will be announced. But what the president sought to deal with is the speculation that had been put on the market that there were going to be haircuts.
In idea when we'll get to know the details of it?
Again, I think that in the next couple of weeks, we should have the details of that strategy announced. I suspect it to be done before budget. That's my suspicion.
Is the debt sustainability analysis done now?
It's done now.
It's done now.
Yeah.
And this should be in the budget also?
I expect the details to be in the budget, but I am hoping that it will be announced before we go to the budget itself, so that we have time to focus on the budget itself and not mix it with all of these other things that come along at the time.
Okay. There's another key issue the president talked about yesterday, which is that we have decided to continue the policy of 30% cut.
Yeah.
This is part of the bigger thing that was announced earlier in the year, 30% cut in salaries of political office holders.
Yes.
Including...
And 30% cut in discretionary budgetary spending.
Including your own salary. Yeah. It has been several months.
No, my salary is not included.
But I thought you were, 30% salaries of political office holders. Political office holders, you include a political office holder?
No, it doesn't affect members of parliament, for example.
Well, I mean, as a minister,
I don't get paid as a minister. I get paid zero as a minister.
Okay, so your parliamentary
100%,
salary is...
So I have a 100% cut on whatever was supposed to be my top-up. I don't get it.
Okay, so what it means, as a member of parliament, if you become a minister...
You don't get a top-up.
You get a top-up. So you don't get... But the fundamental question, it's been several months since these cuts in salaries was announced.
Yeah.
How much exactly has accrued as a result of the cuts?
This morning I was mentioning that the finance ministry at some point will have to put that figure out. But even before they do, you can look to the deficit for the first half of the year as has been presented to Parliament. And it gives you an idea that if that 30% of discretionary expenditure had not been cut, we will not be achieving this on-target deficit that we have. But I agree the finance ministry at some point will have to put out those figures. I think by the end of the year, when the outturns for 2022 are ready and they are announcing the 2023 budget, you should see how much has been saved from discretionary budget expenditure when 30% was cut.
Considering, Mr. Oppong Nkrumah, that this is one of the measures, thankfully, that has been on the books and is being implemented for at least 5 months, if I'm not mistaken, and you've gone to a cabinet retreat several times in that period, we're speaking on the night after the president spoke, and you still can't tell us how much exactly you say from the 30% cut.
In nominal terms, I don't have the figure with me, but what I'm drawing your attention to is that if you look at the deficit for even first half of the year, or as at September, it tells you clearly what has been achieved with that 30% cut. Without that 30% cut on discretionary budget expenditure, and that 30% cut on the salaries of the president, vice president, ministers, and other government appointees, you will not be achieving that particular number. Yeah, and I'm saying to you that when the outturns come before Parliament, you see the details.
Yeah, but that doesn't address a fundamental question. That for a policy that has been implemented since March, at least when the finance minister announced this, when the president then decides to include it in his crisis speech, and we still don't know yet, or the information minister can't tell us tonight, how much has been saved in those 5 months, it's not acceptable.
To you. But I have told you that in all of the 12 measures, these highlights have been mentioned. The details will be provided by the various persons responsible as they rise up to the podium. There are details, for example, you're asking me fuel pricing, where I've told you that those details are going to be provided by Energy and MP and those who are handling it. You're asking me for a specific figure. I'm telling you that, yes, finance should be able to put it up. But when they bring the details before Parliament,
you know the difference
before Parliament,
you know the difference between, the reason I'm now asking this question of this, the difference between the other ones and this. The other ones are in the future.
Yeah.
Some things you intend to do, you're beginning. So yeah, I mean, I can't hold you to that because you will know, because it's still happening. But for something that you've been implementing since March, you have cut 30%, hard figure. The president has talked about it last night. We sit here tonight, and it's a fundamental question you don't know. That then raises questions.
You can go on for 35 minutes about that. It won't change the fact that the finance minister will provide those details. I don't have those details. You can go round and round. Do you know, I don't have those details.
Do you know what that money has been used for?
Good. So there are two ways of doing that. There are those who say, pay it, withdraw it, put it in an account and use it for something else. There are those who say, don't pay it, leave it in the consolidated fund, in the fungible flow, and it can be drawn on for anything else. In our case, it was not paid in the first place to be drawn out and used for something else. It was left in the consolidated fund, unpaid. And so it will not be possible to say it was used for this or that or that. When you leave money in the consolidated fund, money is fungible, it is drawn for various other purposes. So that question about what was it used for is not a question that this administration is going to be answering, because we did not set it out apart to use for something else. I hope you understand me.
Okay, so as we speak currently, specifically, yes, we've made some savings, as you pointed to. In terms of real tangible application of that saving, do we know?
It was not intended that the money will be taken out of the consolidated fund and used for something.
It goes back for everything
No, it doesn't go back. It doesn't even come out of the consolidated fund. It stays there. Okay. And so you will not be able to point to something. This is the difference between what we did and what the previous administration did, where they took it out ostensibly to use for something else.
Another intervention that was announced by the president, and I want to quote this because I must admit it confused me a bit, because I wanted clarity, which is why you're here. We will review standards required for imports into the country, prioritize imports, as well as review the management of our foreign exchange reserves in relation to imports of products such as rice, poultry, vegetable oil, toothpicks, a whole host of things, with intensified government support and that of banking sector can be manufactured and produced in sufficient quantities in Ghana. What does this mean?
In my view, this is one of the biggest announcements of the night. It is one of the biggest things that would ensure, first of all, that we better manage our foreign exchange reserves. 2, we cut down on imports that are not very necessary. 3, we boost local production. As a first step, what the central bank is doing with the banks is to limit the availability of forex for the importation of some of these items that have been mentioned. Rice, poultry, vegetable oil, fruit juices, etc. as a first step.
So you're limiting, not cutting.
Limiting the availability of forex for these.
By how much?
Again, the BOG, when they publish the details, you will find those details in there. The second is that we are working to boost local production, and that's where he mentions working with the local system to boost local production. Because if you do not take care and you cut it off at a go, you may create shortages on the market that will lead to a further increase in the prices. And so we are working to boost local production. The president also mentions that in about 6 months' time, we have an opportunity to review. I know that one of the things that is being considered for that review is the possibility of a ban. There are a lot of people who are advocating for a ban on some of these items. But you need to give it some time to boost local production, which also helps you to, rationalize your forex utilization. And when you get to that point where local production has been significantly boosted, you can take the next consequential steps.
Okay, so as we speak currently, if you are importing fruit juice, bottled water, vegetable oil...
Start thinking about producing them here in Ghana.
Okay, because the central bank won't be giving you what
all
all
you
you
prioritizing the availability of forex in that way.
Yeah,
no, we'll not be doing that.
The black market guys will be smiling all the way to the bank.
Which black market guys?
Well, the guys who were selling the dollar on the black market.
Well, so you'll notice that there's a part of the strategy that talks about clamping down on the forex trade in this country, which is a combination of the black market, the rates, speculation, even the domiciliation of forex into the Ghanaian economy. I think on that part it was a bit more elaborate with what needs to be done to ensure that we domiciliate forex into the Ghanaian jurisdiction. The mix of those efforts are supposed to ensure that those who need forex for legitimate purposes will find it in the banks or the forex bureaus for those purposes, and we can tone down on the speculation and the other things on the site.
Okay, so when you say those who need, what are you prioritizing then?
Well, we are not making things like rice, poultry, vegetable oil, fruit juices a priority, but things like petroleum products, things like medicines and other essential commodities are things that we will be looking to ensure that they get what they require. If somebody wants to buy dollar and keep at home, somebody wants to buy forex and hold on to it, those are not things that we are prioritizing.
Let's talk about another. This is going to last for how long, though? By the way, is there a timeline to this, or this is?
Well, we're starting with we're starting with the first 6 month period. In 6 months, we will review. And then we will take some longer-lasting decisions on how to make that permanent. Okay. Because it is a necessary part of our economic policy. You can build all the 1D, 1Fs that you want, but if the market is still overly accessible to cheaper imports, some of your local production plants will be sitting down. Wilma, for example, which produces fried oil, if you would recall, I think for about a year now, has suspended production because they are cheaper options that are coming from other parts of the world. So when you implement a strategy like this, you make it possible for the local producers to show up, and on a permanent basis, they now control the market.
You also announced, and this is one of the areas that had been consistently a challenge for us in dealing with our deficit revenue collection.
Yep.
You want to improve your revenue collection from
13.
Current, GDP ratio of 13% to about 18
to 19, 20 thereabouts.
To be competitive with the peers in the West African strategy. First of all, there's no timeline to this. When do you want to achieve this?
Well, we are expecting that in this 2023 budget, you will see the first signal. So moving from 13 to what? And then to what the next year and to what the third year. I've told you that there is a fiscal adjustment strategy, and this forms all part of it, the details of which will be put out by the finance minister when it comes before Parliament.
Okay, and how do you plan to do this, achieve this target exactly?
There are a number of revenue measures, some of which you hinted at that had not been successfully implemented. There are a number of revenue measures that will support this 13 move to about 18-20. The good thing is that the fund has had the opportunity to examine them and has admitted into the fiscal framework the ones that they are of the view are achievable, the ones that they are of the view are not achievable, they have not included in that fiscal framework. So when you look at the outturns, for example, of revenue to external debt servicing ratio of about 18%, there's clarity on what goes into it. Again, all of that is going to be announced. I saw, some of your pundits suggest that it's not possible, it's not doable, etc. I don't want to preempt all of those ones. When the details are offloaded, November 15th, which spells out the specific revenue measures, we'll have an opportunity to examine them one by one, which ones are feasible, which ones are not.
You said November 15th,
yeah.
And of course the Constitution has a role to play in that number you throw up in terms of reading the budget. But if I take the President's word, a lot will depend on reaching some form of staff agreement with the IMF.
The staff level agreement.
Staff level agreement.
The staff level agreement will come after November. It will probably come somewhere in December. November 15th is whereby the Public Financial Management Act, not the Constitution, you are required to come to Parliament to lay the budget, and then you have appropriation follow. Now, once you lock in some of these low-level agreements we have with the fund, then you're going to hope that their final mission will be successful, and then they'll proceed to sign a staff level agreement with you before they go to board to get board approval to bless it. And then from early next year, you can get the disbursement and then the crowding in of the funds.
But in terms of the way it works, if November 15, you're going to stick to that hard date, would you have reached a point in the conversation with the IMF that then gives you enough specifics to include or not to include?
We have those specifics. Those are the specifics that the president has outlined here. The negotiations, and I hear people say it's not going well, the IMF is not happy. It's all not true. Some of these numbers that the president is talking about, 55% by 2028, 13 to 1890, these are low-level agreements we have with the fund on the fiscal adjustment and then on the debt program, which are the things that we are moving to lock in into our 2023 budget, even before the third mission comes to town. And then it constitutes some sort of prior actions that they would have seen we are clear on taking, which should hopefully lead to the success of that mission, lead to a staff level agreement, and then we can go to the board.
Is government alive to the reality that you can get a staff level agreement, but an executive board agreement could take longer, and in most cases dependent on your ability to prove that your debt is sustainable?
Government has not said anywhere that a staff level agreement is equal to a board approval. That's the first point. Second point is that there are people, and I've noticed from Saturday on your network, there are people who are very delighted in making a certain submission that it's not possible, it can't be done. You know, when you get a staff level agreement, it doesn't mean you have a board. It's like people are wishing the thing will fail.
No, I mean, but that's just stating facts, right? That getting staff level,
can I answer?
It's not automatic you get.
Nobody has said that getting staff level is equal to board. Yeah. But it appears that there are people who are just wishing that the thing will fail. And I'm saying that I've watched some of them right here on your network. But we are clear in our minds that a staff level agreement is somewhere in December. And that it is after that staff level agreement that the staff will take the agreement to the board and make a justification to the board on behalf of Ghana. And our expectation is that the way we are going, when it gets to the board, by the time we are clear with an SLA, we should get board approval.
Yeah, but I asked you whether government is alive to the fact that that executive board agreement, most often than not, is dependent on proving that your debt is sustainable.
And I'm saying to you that the debt program, bringing it down to 55% by 2028 with a clear debt path, has already been sorted out, which is what is going to be presented before Parliament as part of this budget program. Now, if you have done all of those ones based on what you've negotiated with the fund, and they and they ensure that it has been done, it has been legislated, it is part of your 2023 budget and MTEF, then you have clarity that this staff level agreement is standing on something. It's not an agreement that you are now going to implement.
I'm yet to see an IMF program that lasts for 6 years.
Nobody has said the program lasts for 6 years.
No, but you're saying that this 2028 target is all part of what...
It doesn't mean the program lasts for 6 years.
So,
if you looked at the 2013-2014 program, there were targets that were more than the 3-year program itself. The fact that targets have been set out there does not mean that the program exists to the tenor of those targets. So the fact that you are locking in a debt program which seeks to achieve a 55% by... And that's one of the mistakes that my friend, the Honorable Ato Forsen makes. Because I've watched his lectures, quote unquote, I follow some of his analysis. He seeks to suggest that bringing the debt to 55% means that you must shave off that extra percentage. He talks about 200 billion at a go. And that if you don't do that at a go, the fund will not sign you on. That's a total misunderstanding of debt restructuring.
Yeah, I've listened to him. I don't think he suggested
that. That is what you can watch.
You have to show
you can watch
that you can cut
this down. You can watch his presentation with the former President Mahama. He makes the point that you have to shave off, those are his words, about 200. You don't have to shave off 200 billion at a go. You have to have a program that brings your debt burden down over a period. And the fact that the target is over 6 years does not mean that the fund program itself is a 6-year program.
Fundamental to the debt being sustainable is debt restructuring. You've talked about the separation, so that is interesting.
Yeah.
But then you know that to make it sustainable, you must reach an agreement with your investors, right? With your investors. You haven't even begun a conversation with your investors yet. So how are you able to say so confidently that you've already at least seen a certain path end of the tunnel that allows the executive board looking at your debt being sustainable, primarily based on the debt restructuring, to give you a deal, because that agreement hasn't been reached. You haven't even started the conversation.
Have you followed how the Jamaican debt restructuring was done in 2010?
No, I have followed Zambia, which is much closer to us.
Have you followed how the Dubai one was done in about 2014?
Well, I followed Zambia, which is much closer to us.
Well, have you followed how the Latin American debt was restructured?
Well, I repeat that. I follow Zambia, which is much closer in similarity to what
I've given you
with.
3 examples. You have one. I'm saying to you that what you're saying is not correct. That is not how it's always done. There are many instances in which you have, sometimes you have collective action clauses that trigger in the process. There are many instances in which sometimes you have to demonstrate with groups of investors where you are going. I don't want to get ahead of myself.
Either way, Mr. Oppong Nkrumah, the IMF is clear. The IMF have a whole document detailing how this happened. You can never achieve this without some form of agreement.
It's like you are wishing it will fail.
No, I'm asking a question.
Are you one of those wishing it will fail?
I don't know. I don't know when since the question became a statement.
So I am saying to you,
a clear guideline.
I am saying to you,
on how this is done.
We have been sitting with the IMF.
Yeah.
I was in Washington with George Biafi, your reporter.
Yeah.
We've been sitting with the IMF.
You say
and going through.
I mean, just for clarity.
Can I answer you? I've not even answered you.
Just for clarity, are you saying that you're achieving the debt restructuring without an agreement with investors, whether a group or individuals?
I am saying to you, my brother Evans, that the debt restructuring program details will be put out. And we have arrived at this point because we have sat with the fund, we have clarity on what it takes to get to those targets. And when the details are put out, you will see clearly how it is brought to sustainable limits and by what time. We are clear in our minds after our negotiations with the fund what needs to be done and when. And I'm saying to you, let's give them the opportunity to do their work.
That's Kojo Oppong Nkrumah. He is the Information Minister. I'm delighted that you joined us, Mr. Oppong Nkrumah. Thank you very much.
You have a good evening.
Enjoy the rest of your evening.